this toy box under the table kinda gives me an idea. What if I had something similar that slid under my toolbox? Something I could put the stuff in I don't use a whole lot, but when you gotta have it, you gotta have it. But it's stuff that you normally have to push out of the way or look over every time you need something else. So what if I built a spot just for it? So looking here at my toolbox, you can see it's just got random stuff in it. Little come along and some straps. I got a 3/4 inch drive, socket set, custom made tools for on the job stuff, and extra saw blades, plumb bobs. Stuff that I need, but not regularly. So this is a cage that I built a while back to store my tool bag in. And when I was making it, I had a little extra room, so I thought I'll add another shelf. 2 is better than 1, so I put 1 for my bag and then just an extra shelf under the bottom to write on with notepads, calculators. And sitting here at that shelf, I solve a lot of problems in the world studying right here. Over the years, I have customized my toolbox in several different ways. First thing I remember doing was adding a steel plate for the top. It came with a wooden top, and that just isn't rugged enough for me. All I did was scratch it up and damage it. So I replaced that with a hunk of steel. But on the back of my box, I got a hose reel, an extra power strip, and extension cord. And we can't forget our decimal charts and drill and tap sizes. Just got them taped up there on the side where I can see them real easily. But how I'm going to customize my box now is I'm going to change the locks on it. Right here, I'm going to show you how easy it is to pick these locks. This is just some Allen wrenches I had, and I ground them down on a bench grinder to make a lock picking kit. So this is simple. What you do is wait for your buddy to have a vacation day, or just walk out for a little while, because all you need is a couple seconds to pick the lock on his box and get what you want out of it. And if you're a really good friend, make sure you lock the box back when you get done. That way he'll never know you were in there. And you want to, put things back the way you found them. I go around my toolbox and replace all my locks with this style. Now I'm sure that these can be picked, but it's a lot harder. So if your buddies are going to get into your stuff, you at least want to make them work for it. Seems I'm off to a poor start, already knocking stuff off in the floor. But by now you might be asking yourself why I'm building a box instead of just buying one. Well, I can think of 2 reasons why. First, if I just bought a box and slid it under the table, it'd be really hard to make a video on that. I've been like, hey, here's a box, throw some tools in it, slide it under here, thanks for watching. No big deal. But this adds a little more character by building it myself. I took the measurement so the box would fit very tight. I don't have a whole lot of room for error here. There's only about an 1/8 inch of space from the top of the box to the bottom of my toolbox. And I'd have never found a box to buy that would fit that tight, have locks on it, handles, and wheels. I would have never found that, no way. So just to keep customizing my toolbox, I decided to build it myself. plywood is hanging over the edge just a smidge. Using the angle grinder is perfect for lining these things up and making it flush. Now that I've got all the sides on, some of the screws, well, all of the screws are too long, so I grab a cutoff wheel and go back and cut these sharp points off. So what I'm doing here is using a straight edge to get all my hinges perfectly in line. I clamp it to the two hinges on the end, and then the two hinges in the middle, I just bump them back until they touch. And that's the straightest way I know how to make them. But these hinges are spring loaded to stay open. I thought to myself when I was building this thing that would work. That would help keep the lid open, but I wasn't really satisfied with that. It was too cheap and flimsy, so I decided to come back and add some gas cylinders later on. And also, I'm going to add just a little framework to the door itself. This is what I'm going to use for the rollers. I need to make 4 plates so I can bolt the rollers to the plates and then screw the plates to the box. Being able to use this iron worker to punch these holes in the plate instead of having to drill them is like the best thing ever. It also shears metal, it also bends metal, you can notch metal, you can cut angle iron. This thing does a little bit of everything. But you know, not everybody's got one, I understand that. You can cut all this stuff with a bandsaw or a cutoff wheel, and you can always drill the holes. But since I've got one, I'm going to use it today. Make my life a little bit better. But there's one thing about it. I might not be good at nothing else in the world, but one thing I can do is lay out plates. I have laid out thousands of plates. All kinds of shapes and sizes, all kinds of different hole patterns. It doesn't matter. I've done through holes, threaded holes, countersunk holes, counterbored holes. It doesn't matter. I know how to lay out some plate. So what I'm doing here is just getting my box off the table, so when I drill through it, I won't drill holes in that wooden tabletop. Using roller balls instead of casters or wheels, I can roll this box in any direction. I can spin it in a circle if I wanted to. Kicking it around here with my foot, this thing moves very easily. Installing the locks on this thing was probably the hardest and most time-consuming part of the build. Making all the latches and getting all the holes perfectly lined up, it took a long time. I would measure and then measure again, then I'd drink some coffee and then go measure again, because I couldn't mess up. Once I drilled a hole in the front of the box, that's where it had to go. I didn't have no room for error, and getting all that just right took me a little while. Okay, so the locks work great. So the next thing I'm going to do is go around all the edges and just add these little pieces of stripping. They're just a 1/2 inch thick. It was just a 2x that I took and ripped on my table saw and made a bunch of strips. This 1/2 round file worked perfect to notch these strips out to go around the locks. So I'm going to put on these gas cylinders next. And my plan was just to get a piece of small plate and drill and tap it and just screw these little studs in. Well, I don't have an 8 by 1.25 tap. But what I do have is some metric nuts and bolts. So what I'll end up doing is just simply welding a nut to a piece of plate with a hole in it, and then I'll just screw the bolt onto the nut. And back to laying out more plates. So a quick thing to do is just lay out one plate. It doesn't matter if you have 5 of them, if they all need to be the same, just lay out one and then clamp them together. And then when you go to drill it, just drill all 5 plates at the same time. So only while I'm welding this, I'm just going to screw a nut on the back side of this stud so it will hold it in place for me. And when I get done, I'll just take the nut off the back. This thing is really hot. Normally I just go dump it under my sink and cool it down a little bit. But I got the water turned off in my shop because it's in the low 20s. and I don't want my water lines to bust. So I guess I could have left my welding gloves on, but I didn't. I have been waiting a couple days to paint the box. I had to wait on it to warm up, so now that it's a scalding 35 degrees outside, I went ahead and painted the box. I was tired of waiting. And as far as I could tell, it came out just fine, even though the can said not to paint in temperatures lower than 50 degrees. I'm not sure why it says that, but this turned out pretty good to me. So adding the handles on was the finishing touches. So now that I've got, let's see, 53 times 24 times 6. Now that I've got 7,632 cubic inches of space, I can start filling it full of junk and getting it out of my toolbox. Because my toolbox doesn't just have tools in it. It's got, I don't know, welding helmets, welding jackets. You got safety harnesses and hard hats, my lunch box. Just stuff that I don't want hanging up on the side or laying in the floor on a shelf somewhere. I can fit everything in here. But I was just trying to use all the space that I had. And there's space right here under my box to put something. So I hope this helps give somebody some ideas on better ways to store their tools. But like always, thank you so very much for watching here at the house.